run an incubator and a co-working space in Yangon. It's called Project Hub Yangon. I think of myself as an accidental entrepreneur. I never thought I would start a business. It wasn't really my thing. I'm in the development industry, and I'm a public policy person, and I was always working for nonprofits and NGOs. And so my motivation was actually, I was kind of fed up with that industry. I was really frustrated with working with nonprofits that were struggling and they weren't sustainable. And I was also frustrated with the big international organizations that are really bureaucratic and slow. And I wanted to do something. And at the time, I was actually working in Singapore. I was working at a nonprofit that was struggling, but we were promoting entrepreneurship, and that nonprofit was training low-income women to start businesses. So that sparked my passion to promote entrepreneurship, and at that same time I was looking to move on from that job, and I was looking at what other opportunities I could go to. And honestly, a lot of it was about timing. This was 2012, and Myanmar was all over the newspapers. It was opening up, it was transitioning, and so with my background, I was also with my partner, and we basically brainstormed, what can we do? Like, what can we do in Myanmar that would be different? What can we do that would be sustainable, but also have an impact? And we decided that we wanted to start an incubator and a co-working space. And that was our initial idea, and we'd never been to Myanmar, so we had no idea whether that would work or whether anyone would be interested. So we had that idea, and then we bought tickets and went to Yangon. When I created the idea, I didn't really know the on-the-ground situation, or I didn't really know the problem. I had the problem in my head at a very grand scale. I knew that in the country of Myanmar, I knew that it was, there was a lot of poverty, I knew that it was the least developed country, and I knew that it was transitioning. And so I also knew that entrepreneurship is often a very good solution to promote, to reduce poverty and to create jobs. That's all I knew, but I really didn't have the nuances of the problem. I didn't know what Myanmar entrepreneurs needed, and I didn't know, what they would be interested in. So that's why I spent a lot of time doing market research, which I think we'll talk about in a minute. So that was my motivation, was really to try to do something on my own, and to try to have a social impact. And my goal, when I went to Myanmar, my initial goal, to be very honest, was don't go broke. Don't lose all your money. That's what I thought about for the first 6 months. Like, every day we were spending money, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have no money. But that was the that was a short-term goal. Long-term goal was the idea of creating this, amazing, huge co-working space, kind of like this. This is beautiful. I wanted to create a co-working space where all the entrepreneurs would be launching businesses, and I wanted to be providing everything for entrepreneurs, from the office space to funding to mentorship, etc. And it was on a very big scale. This original vision was like 3 stories, thousands of square feet, like lots of mentors, and that's where I started. And I'll leave it there with that big vision, and we'll tell you kind of what I did next and whether that vision became a reality. So how did I do market research and validate the idea? I talked to my potential customer as quickly as possible. So my customer was going to be entrepreneurs, or Burmese entrepreneurs and Burmese young entrepreneurs. And so I tried to talk to them as quickly as possible. And I landed in Yangon on a Thursday. And the next day there was a conference where, like, a bar camp, I don't know if you have it here, but you can sign up on the day to speak. So we were there speaking in front of a crowd of people. I had no idea what I was doing, honestly. It was like, they don't know who you are, they don't know what we're talking about. We were introducing this very complex idea of an incubator, but I had to do it because it was a room of 20 potential entrepreneurs, 20 young people, and they were right there to give me feedback immediately and to ask questions, and that was the beginning of the market research. We spent 6 months working full-time on the idea without any pay. So that was really what I see as our market research time. And we did that conference, but we also started to run kind of pilots or tests of our services. So our services were going to be workshops and then events. So we went to private schools and we said, can we teach a free workshop to your classes? And that's how we learned, okay, am I good at teaching workshops? Do people like it? And then at the end of the workshop, we would take a survey from 60 potential entrepreneurs and get data from them that was to learn about whether they were what services they were interested in, how much they were willing to pay for certain services like the co-working space, and we also networked, we ran events, we did anything we can do to get our name out there and to learn from our community. So I really would stress that our market research, and I'd recommend that your market research isn't about only being behind a desk and like looking at the market size, but really, as Moss also said, go and learn who is your customer. Your customer is not just mothers, not just women. Like my customer is named Rosie, she's 25, she's from this state, she has this education. You want to know everything about them. What did we learn from the market research? Interestingly, our original idea was that we were going to have an incubator for social enterprises, so specifically for businesses that have a social impact. No one knew what a social enterprise was, so we took that out. We're like, okay, we're not going to be an incubator for social enterprises. We're just going to be an incubator for any entrepreneur, because already no one knew what an incubator was, and so then we were trying to confuse it again and say, oh, you also have to be a social enterprise. So that was an important part of our business model that we then changed based on our market research. The second thing that we changed was our strategy, because based on the market research, we saw that there was a demand for our workshops and events, and there was some demand for the co-working space. But there was a big difference between the foreign demand for co-working and the foreigner price for co-working and the Burmese demand and price, because co-working, again, didn't exist, so people weren't really sure what we were offering. And because there was a really big difference, and because there really wasn't that much data about co-working, it was really difficult for us to then convince investors to invest in my idea of a 3-story co-working space when I don't really know if Burmese people are going to pay for a co-working space. And this was discussions we had with investors where we were debating every single number about specifically, was a co-working space going to be profitable and was there going to be demand? And the market research couldn't really tell us that, and the investor really wanted to see more numbers that we didn't have. So we changed our strategy, and actually that pushed us to say, okay, actually we're not going to take investment right now. We're going to pilot a very small co-working space for 1 year or 2 years and prove the concept and get the data and demonstrate the demand, and then we'll come back to the investors. So again, my original idea was this huge space, and in the end we got a very small space, probably about 1/3 of this size, maybe half of this size. We got a small space, and we just said, okay, let's try. And that was the way we were able to test that biggest assumption of our business model, which our market research couldn't really provide the answer for. So the market research is great, but you really don't learn as much as you can as you learn when you test and you pilot things and you just get out there and you talk to people. Really try to trial your product or your service in any way you can. Like, try to think of the most creative and cheap way to test your product or your service or your assumptions in your business model. And I think nowadays it's much easier to do that because we have online tools, and also I'd encourage you to lean on your friends and family, because often they'll be the first potential customers to try out your product or service. And the other thing I wanted to add then would be, it sounds very simple, but figure out how are you going to make money, and think about how much money do you want to make, because I feel like a lot of people have this idea of, oh, I want to start, I don't know, a fashion business, and it's going to be really cheap, so I'm going to sell all my products for $2. And, then you do the math and you're like, wait, you're making then, I don't know, $5,000 a year, let's say. And then you realize, and that's okay. Like maybe you're really passionate about that business and you don't care if you don't make that much money, or you think that you're going to get money from another place like a donor or fundraising, and that's okay. But I think a lot of people don't spend enough time really figuring out how are they going to make money and how much money do they really want to make in their life, because starting a business is a life choice. It doesn't have to be forever, but for the next, let's say year, you'll be doing that. And so I think it's really important to think about that at the beginning. What kind of business you're going to start, and how big do you want it to be, and whether it's going to be something that's going to be a huge money maker, or if it's more something that you're passionate about and you don't mind if you don't make that much money. But you really have to think about it and figure out the margins, and also no one thinks about operations. How are things actually going to get out there? Where are you going to get the leather for your necklace? How are you going to get it to the store? All those sorts of things. Also, people kind of forget to think about. Usually they learn by doing, which is also fine. The most effective marketing for us is word of mouth. And so it's really important that we keep the quality of our service really high all the time, so that our clients are happy, or our customers are happy, because they're the ones who are telling other people about us. So that's, for me, it's word of mouth and just making sure that it's always the best that it can be. I worried a lot about competitors. And I stressed about that, and I took everything really personally. Like if I saw a competitor doing something similar, I'd feel really like they know that I do that. Why are they doing that? So I shouldn't have even spent time on that. I should obviously know, and that's not to say you shouldn't know who your competitors are or study them or keep up with them, but it was useless to worry about them and to stress and to get upset, because it's just a waste of my energy. And so I still do it. I haven't figured out how not to do that. But yeah, that's what comes to mind of what I worried about, that if I could do it all again, I'd be much more, I guess, confident and just never worry about what my competitors are doing. A business is a series of decisions that you're making. So my trigger point of a new product would be very different than yours and very different than yours, especially because I have a different goal with my business and they have different goals. So I think what a successful entrepreneur does is takes time to analyze and gets data and gathers data and feedback before they make decisions. And they also, if you are thinking about setting up, if you want to know in the future, okay, what is our trigger point before we decide that product is not working or we have to pivot, try to think about it, with your team beforehand. And as long as you make a decision that you're comfortable with, of okay, we've decided that we have this, it's your logic or your rationale of, okay, we've decided that if we don't get 50,000 uploads, then we're going to pull the product. Or if we've decided if we've lost, $10,000, then we're going to pull the product. So it's all up to you and how you make the decisions. And I think just you need to take time to make the decisions, and you need to have data to back up your decisions, and you have to be comfortable with that.